Are you looking for real, raw, and unfiltered news about what's happening in the greater Philadelphia area? Are you sick of all the vanilla takes about the local issues affecting our community right now? You're in the right place. Tune in to the Philly Face to Face podcast.
All right, we are back on the Philly Face to Face podcast, and we've got the most talked about guy in Pennsylvania real estate on the show right now. And he's laughing. I'm not kidding. I mean, we talked earlier about how many interview requests you've been getting, so I really appreciate you coming on. We got Jesse Storm with brokersrealty.com. He got one of the few waivers granted for real estate in Pennsylvania. I've seen one other on Governor Wolf's site. So, Jesse, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the topic.
Well, I've been in real estate for many, many years. When I retired, I got my real estate license in 2010.
Yeah.
So it kind of rejuvenated me. I mean, I had some medical issues, sold some prior businesses, and kind of retired and thought, you know what, I've always enjoyed real estate. I was buying and selling before that on my own without a real estate license. And I thought, you know what, I always like interacting with people and helping people. So I wound up going and getting my real estate license in the end of 2010. And back then, you remember the mortgage crash that happened in 2008. So 2010, everybody kept telling me, don't expect to eat off of what you do in real estate for the next couple of years, because it's just not going to happen. And, the reality was I did 36 transactions in my first 6 months in the business. So I felt pretty comfortable with it. And I fairly quickly started a team of agents, and in Lancaster County, where I originally started, I started with what was Prudential back then. And I kind of grew from there, and I realized real quick that, a lot of the big brokerages were more about the price tag and the money that they were collecting than the individuals and the realtors that were working for them. And Prudential back in Lancaster was a very large company with a lot of agents. And in my opinion, in 6 months, you were more of a number and not a team player, basically. So I had moved over to what was called Select Realty Coldwell Banker, and spent quite a few years at Coldwell Banker. I mean, and I don't know if this is the right place to give a shout out to some brokers, but the guys who ran Coldwell Banker Select Professional back then were some of the best down to earth brokers that one could ever ask for. And I really felt that I had a long-term home there. And when they decided to sell out to NRT, I started making some of those little bunny jumps. I don't want to be in the big conglomerate. So all the successful realtors, where do they go? They make a stop at Remax. So I did Remax for a couple of minutes and realized it wasn't a good fit for me there. So I jumped away from that and ultimately found Brokers Realty. And we developed, so Brokers Realty has been in business since 1998, and it's been family owned all that time, and really John and I have a very good relationship from the standpoint that, I own my own offices, and he is my hired broker. I lean on him for questions, and he leans on me for questions. I mean, some of the very first things that we did as a small brokerage, because when I came on, there were only a handful of offices with Brokers Realty, was started buying things in bulk, like yard signs and things like that, because I was in the wholesale business for many, many years. So I know, you can get the best bang for your buck, buying in large quantities and having having your signs printed mass. And we lowered the overhead quite a bit, and we're able to gradually expand the company. Now, Brokers Realty isn't a great fit for every agent, but again, it's where I find home to be. John and I and Betty all work really well together. And I know that all of the agents that are watching this, a lot of you have found a life home where you're at. And whether that's Keller Williams, whether that is, Equity, Pennsylvania, wherever it may be, the big thing is that you're happy and that company supports you in providing the best service possible to your clients. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a broker that's going to stand up behind you and that expects you to stand up behind him or her, it's not going to work long term. So that brings us to what was transpiring at the beginning of COVID. For a lot of you folks out there, you know that a year and a half ago when we were at Triple Play, almost 2 years ago now, when we were at Triple Play, Betty Pyatt, which is our other co-owner of the company, went blind in one eye at Triple Play. John and I rushed her.
Can you explain to everyone what Triple Play is? Because this might hit some people that aren't realtors. I think it might be relevant here.
Triple Play is a huge convention that brings real estate companies and agents together for a lot of training, hands-on training. Literally lasts about 3 days, and you are engulfed in training. So like 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago when we were there, a lot of the big things that we spent our time and money looking at and watching were the attorneys talking about the hemp production in Pennsylvania, where the marijuana production was going, what the agents had to look out for how, where to put those particular businesses and the sales stores. So we constantly train and learn what is on the cutting edge. So Triple Play just is a great convention to get a lot of experience, to get a lot of knowledge in a quick format where you're kind of away from the day-to-day business of agents and clients, and you're kind of engulfed in learning and education. It's not a cheap venture to go to, but I think all agents should make the opportunity to get there. Plus, you not only get the training, but you get a ton of exposure to other electronics companies that are out there, like Zone, for one, was at Triple Play. A lot of real estate brokerages are at Triple Play to tell other agents what they have to offer, but even banks and lenders, closing companies, title companies. So that way you get to meet a lot of the faces that you work with on a day-to-day basis, and you get to see what products and services they have available for you to help your clients with. So when we were at Triple Play, Betty went blind in one eye and hasn't been back to full power since. She is good, she is great, but she just hasn't been back to 100% since losing her eyesight in one of her eyes. She had a stroke while we were down there staying. And then we left once Triple Play was over. Robin Pyatt, John, Betty, and myself, we all drove down to Florida. And
don't drive.
Well, but we stopped. So what we did was an all-office tour. So
okay.
we stopped at our Pennsylvania offices. We stopped at our Maryland offices. We stopped in our Georgia offices on our way down to Florida. And then I had to stop in and check on some properties in Savannah. So it was a workcation type of thing. And then, so we were in Florida for 2 weeks. The total staycation or vacation lasted about 2 weeks on our road trip down and back. While we were in Florida, it was red tide. So a lot of you guys can say, "Hey, I know what red tide means. It's a bacteria in the water. It's stuff in the water that can make you really sick if you don't know what red tide is."
I don't know what it means, so I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, so once a year, I guess the undercurrents and undertows dredge up algae and whatever. I'm not 100% certain on it, but it makes the water turn red. So they call it red tide. So we were there just at the end of red tide, not thinking of anything. We dipped our toes in the water. We went out waist deep in some water because we were told, that wasn't a big deal. When we came back to Pennsylvania, John got sepsis, was in the hospital, and almost passed away. So my two business partners that I rely on, Betty and John, were basically out of commission. So we were running the business.
John, what'd you do? I mean, that happens. That's a big change for any business owner. So how did you pivot from there? What did you do?
Well, Robin Pyatt jumped in like a champion. She's always been a big part of the company and running the company day to day. She had jumped in like a champion. Her and I we took the bull by the horn. I kind of stepped back from doing sales and transactions, and we focused on running our business to make sure that our agents, had our support while our two biggest players, office players, were out of commission. So it took John several months to recover from that, because he was really on the brink of death there with sepsis. And so John just started to recover to probably 90% health right before COVID. But he was scheduled to go in for knee surgery last year. So he figured, and his doctor figured, well, now's as good a time as any to go in and get the knee surgery. You're back to about 90%. It's been almost a year. Let's go in for knee surgery. COVID hits the day before he goes in for knee surgery. They took him in for the elective surgery. He got very sick, wound up instead of spending 2 nights in the hospital, he spent 2.5 weeks of COVID, the first 2.5 weeks of COVID in the hospital, then had to go to a rehab. So again, it was Robin and I really running the company. And as soon as COVID hit, I was all over calling all of my contacts. So if you look at my phone, I've got almost every House rep and senator there is possible to know in South Central Pennsylvania. And a prior business of mine was wholesale. We sold cabinet grade plywood, A1, A2 cherry plywood. So Tom Wolf's business that he owned prior to going into the Capitol was a cabinet shop.
Yep.
So I had a lot of contacts for Tom Wolf's cabinet. I didn't feel comfortable reaching directly out to Tom Wolf. So I reached out to the individuals that he brought from his surrounding life into the office. And I said, hey, what's going on? You guys just announced this waiver at 8 o'clock at night. What is going on? We're in real estate. Is there going to be a blanket approval for real estate? And those individuals in his cabinet made it very clear to me that, Jesse, there will be no blanket approval for real estate. You have to file for the waiver. So that night at about 11 o'clock at night, I got on the website and started filling out everything for this little form that I got.
Yeah, and the waiver's dated March 23rd. So I think what a lot of people are going to want to know, and what I've gathered from, I got turned on to this in the PAR Facebook group, and this has been a big controversial thing. I applied for a waiver, didn't get one, and that's okay. What did the application include? What did you put in the application, and did you get any direction on that to help you get approved?
I didn't get any direction on doing the application. I was told, and the same thing that everybody else was told through the media, that the waivers were available. And I dove onto the website after speaking to the individual saying, hey, is real estate going to get a blanket approval? And when I heard no, again, my business partners are in the hospital and out of commission.
Yeah, it's good leadership. I mean, you got to do that. No question about it.
So I dove onto the website, jumped on. Very first thing it says is, what's the business? Real estate. What type of business? You had to lay out. So I laid out real estate related services, including property management, because our business does residential, commercial, and property management. So I wanted to make sure that if we're approved for a waiver, that it covered all aspects of our business.
Very different disciplines, because there's some people that only do commercial, only do property management, only do residential sales. So keep going here. I'm curious about this, because I've heard that property management got many more approvals than the sales side. I mean, that's been documented. So
yeah. So what we laid out then was, because that night when I heard what was going on, I'm sitting in one of our offices right now. I immediately called all my guys that work for us and said, look, we want safety windows put in every place. We want to build a false wall and put safety windows in. And, so I went on to, when I went in to develop our safety plan for it, I stipulated that we were going to have a public lobby area with a safety glass and a pass-through tray underneath of the safety glass. So that way the customers could not physically interact back and forth without going through the safety tray. We were going to limit our in-office staff to 1 to 2 individuals for our in-office staff, and that we would provide hand sanitizer, gloves, and masks. And being that since we do have a construction arm, I already had a lot of N95 masks set up at that point. And if you notice, when I first filed, let's see if you guys can, without the light, I'm not sure if you can see the addresses on there. But I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just,
there's a couple of them. It says Cole Township. I mean, I've seen this document before. I've got a copy of it, so we'll put it up for everyone to see.
So what I did was I filed for what is our world headquarters, which is our Lewisberry office, along with the office that I was sitting in the day this was all unfolding. Remember, I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm currently in Northumberland County, and I've been here since the start of COVID. A lot of my investors do work up here, and that's why I was up here, and I've just stayed up here ever since. And just ran the show from up here. This is one of our smaller offices, very intimate. So I've got all of our company phones, and I can, but again, I'm computer savvy, so I jumped onto our phone system, forwarded all the calls, so that way we can answer the calls up here. So that way our secretaries weren't in there. We also added individuals' cell phone numbers to our call system, so that way when the phone would ring, it would ring in this office for all of our office phones, and it would ring my cell phone in case I wasn't in here, and it would ring several other people's cell phones all at the same time, so that way we could still take calls and live answer our phone calls without being in the office, without forwarding the calls, because we own our own telephone system. The Grand Stream system, I think a lot of brokers really should look into those after this, because you can pick up your office phone, unplug it from the internet, and take it with you on vacation. So you can physically forward calls to your agents. You can your extensions live, but the same thing would happen though is on your phone. It wants to see my face. I have a Grand Stream app on my phone down here, and I can open that up on my personal cell phone. I don't know if it's going to clear, but anyway, kind of works like Ring Central type of thing.
Got it. Okay.
But all of our extensions for all of our agents are live on my cell phone, and I can take a call on my cell phone, and I can forward that call to any one of our agents' extensions, and it will ring their office phone and their cell phone at the same time. So again, these are all things that I put into our safety plan.
It sounds like you really laid it out where, hey, we're going to work virtually. We've got a safety window. Here's our plan. Here's our safe selling procedures, which I'm a big proponent of. We developed the same thing, and that was included in the application is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so our safety plan was about 2.5 pages long.
Okay.
That we put in. It wasn't just a little one-liner. I mean,
Yeah.
really laid it out from start to finish, with our offices, securing our offices so clients could actually come into the office and we could conduct business through glass without them being physically in contact with any of our agents, with our pass-through trays. And I mean, we've been doing settlements like that too, through the safety glass. So, I mean, and I figure that settlements is part of real estate services. So we've been full bore doing as much as we possibly can. Again, it comes to the safety of the customer and how safe the customer feels. Because we're not going to put a customer out because they don't feel
100%.
comfortable.
I mean, that if you're doing that as a company, might as well just close your doors right now. I mean, especially with everything going on. So I love that. So you filled out the application, put in the safety plan. What was the turn time from when the application got submitted to when you actually got the waiver?
So I put the application in about 11 o'clock at night, not the next day, but 1 a.m. the following day. In the morning, my phone beeps when anything comes through. And so 1:30 in the morning, my phone went off, and I had it set so that way if an email came through from the government, anything that ended with .gov, my phone would almost ring 3 times. Well, it woke me up at 1 something in the morning, ringing 3 times because an email came in that was from .gov. Rolled over, picked up the phone, flipped it open, and basically this in an email version, and then the last line saying expect the actual signed approval within 6 to 12 weeks.
Well, obviously, it came a lot sooner than that. So
I was like, okay, 6 to 12 weeks for the actual approval. And it was about 3 to 4 days later that it never came through the mail. They actually emailed you this then.
Got it. Okay.
Print out. So, I mean, it wasn't difficult in my opinion. I mean, but I've run businesses all my life. I've done safety plans all my life. I've negotiated health insurance for 194 employees. You know, I mean, so I'm looking at this kind of stuff, and it really was generic. To me, I felt very comfortable doing it. Now, the average realtor may not. But as soon as we got our approval, the email approval, I started going out on Facebook and blasting out to everybody on Facebook, on PAR, Central Pennsylvania Facebook's page, saying, hey, you guys can get waivers. They're there. We're getting one. We were approved. I put out our entire safety plan to everybody. I copied the email originally that said we were getting the safety plan and put out, because my goal at that point then was to help as many brokers and agents get a waiver as possible. And the crazy
What kind of reaction did you get from PAR? What kind of reaction did you get from PAR, the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors? Because we got some mixed messaging from them. I mean, that's been pretty clear.
Within 12 hours, I was attacked by probably 150 realtors because I was putting our clients at risk. I was going to kill people. I was going to infect people with COVID. And my response was, that's not our goal. Our goal is to be able to finish business, to help clients that need the help through this time period. And we reached out to PAR, and PAR's response was, well, let's talk to you. How did you do it? So I sent them an email with everything that we did for our safety procedure, sent them a copy of the waiver, sent them what we filled in for real estate related services, including property management. And I guess his name is Mike McPhee, called me. We had a conversation on the phone, walked him through what I did. And I want to say 2.5, 3 days later, we had a owner-broker manager meeting on Zoom with PAR. And basically all they said was, it was a fluke.
I've seen this before. That's why I'm asking. And it was, I think you're talking about Mike McGee, the CEO. So they called it a fluke.
Yeah.
And, the reason I'm asking all this is because I'm an active member of PAR. We got connected through an agent that works with you. And we had she had posted the waiver and I had seen it. And we didn't get any sort of direction from them. They didn't tell anyone to file waivers until like the day before. I had got it myself and did something similar. Now, whoever gets approved gets approved. I'm not worried about that. So what's your view of the guidance there? Because we're the only state right now where this is happening. You got a waiver, which I'm happy for you. More than you know. I'm happy to see anyone doing business right now. So what's your take on that, knowing how you got through the process pretty quickly in 48 hours from submission, and there's other people that aren't. And you're right, half the agents don't even want to go out and do business anyway. They're more concerned about collecting unemployment and how that's working, which is fine. They've got to be safe. But we've got clients we got to serve. That's where I'm coming from, and that's where you're coming from too, Jesse.
Yeah, well, and it's not about just having clients to serve. It's having clients that are in necessary need of service.
100%. They got mortgage payments. They got to sell their house. They're moving no matter what. They've got nowhere to go. I mean, the need is there, very basic for some people. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, my personal belief from the beginning of this was real estate is a necessity. Shelter is a necessity. If it wasn't a necessity, why would Governor Wolf, and I even hate saying governor anymore, but I have another name that I call him, starts with a D, but it's not the bad word. If shelter wasn't a necessity, why would Tom Wolf suspend foreclosures and evictions during this time if shelter was not a necessity item? So
he said it in his press conference. He said it was a necessity in his press conference last Thursday. Those words came out of his mouth. So you're absolutely right.
So if we jump back, Mr. McGee, first had said on the first manager broker agent meeting, or manager broker owner meeting from PAR, that it was a fluke. The following week, we had our follow-up meeting on there, and that was the day that the waivers were closing. So at 2 o'clock, at the end of that meeting, they said, everyone should file for a waiver. What can it hurt? So there were 4 pages of broker owner managers on that live Zoom meeting at that point. And with that being said, there's maybe 40 people on a page times 4 pages. They're the only people that heard them say, file for a waiver. That's stupid. Especially when I told them back when we got the waiver that I spoke with the governor's office and his cabinet, and they made it very clear that they wanted every broker to develop their own safety plan. They weren't going to give a blanket approval. They wanted the owners of the businesses to create a safety plan and submit, and they would review the safety plan, and if they felt that it was sufficient enough for operation, that they would approve them for a waiver. I told them that at the very beginning when we didn't even have the form yet. We only had the email. And, so it hurts me to think that PAR, as our leadership, was so focused on something. They were told multiple times, not only from myself, but from our Senator Scott Martin, from Senator Almond, from Rep. Kathy McPhee. Those are the 3 that I know told them, because I've got very good relationships with them and spoke with them, that they told PAR there would not be a blanket approval. They would try as hard as they could, but it did not look like there was going to be a blanket approval.
Well, they were right. I mean, they were right. I mean, we're sitting here now. We're not even having this conversation. That's not the case. So, so you gave the information up front. PAR didn't disseminate it appropriately to the membership, is what I'm hearing you say. There's been a couple other people that had waivers approved. I know of an agent or a brokerage in Philadelphia that got one. It was on the governor's list. I didn't go through all the businesses. So you had a plan. You were very clear. It sounds like you were very organized, which a lot of business owners probably would have done had they had the right information. So it sounded like you got some intel that other people didn't, because I've spoken to local senators in our marketplace, and we're a little, you're in Lancaster. I grew up in Chester County, so we're not that far. I mean, it's, and then I live in on the main line right now. That a senator told me specifically in an email, I was told no real estate waivers were granted. And we're hearing all this talk about transparency. I sent him a copy of your waiver because he's involved in this House Bill 2412 now to make real estate essential. So what do you think about the transparency of the administration right now? You've been on the front lines here. I mean, this has been really frustrating for a lot of people. And like I said, there's consumers that need to buy and sell real estate right now, and we're the only state that's not able to have these sort of activities happen.
Well, this type of stuff is normal. And, so in a prior life, I spent a year and a half of my life lobbying Harrisburg for children's rights legislation to be changed and rewrite the custody laws in Pennsylvania.
No cause.
Back then, I was told that the legislation hadn't been rewritten since 1977. Many people before you tried to do it, and it'll never happen. And I had it done in a year and a half. It's about the game with Harrisburg. So back then, we actually wrote 2 pieces of legislation, one that the Domestic Violence Coalition and everybody jumped on board with, one that the Fathers' Rights organizations jumped on board with. And until we got them to the hearing, I had them all convinced that instead of just doing a simple rewrite, a simple line change, to do the full rewrite, which gave us grandparents' rights and a bunch of other things in the custody legislation. So I learned years ago that Harrisburg is a game. You've got to throw multiple things at them, because this way, if they don't like this and they don't want to grab onto this, they might grab this over here because, they don't think that you're going to want to deal with that. So they turn you down over here and figure you're going to walk away from it over there. And so, but if these two items are basically the same thing, just rewritten in a different language or a different way. So with this being said, I file waivers for all 14 of our real estate offices. This waiver was approved for our corporate office, which gave us blanket rights for all of our offices, because in real estate, your corporate office is your main office where
The
all of
broker's
your
the
license
broker.
hang.
Yep.
Yes. All of our sub offices are just satellite offices. You know, agents use them. It's the same broker that runs them, but they're just satellite offices, which in my opinion, if you look at the real estate law, if your corporate office has the waiver, you're carte blanche across your entire footprint. So
totally agree with you there. Totally agree.
So in Pennsylvania, I filed this being my strongest application. And then I filed 14 other ones. They denied 13.
They denied a lot more than 13, just 13 of yours. So
yeah, well, they denied 13 of our applications. Again, I was up all night doing that. I mean, but the one that I wanted, and I made my language very strong and very, flamboyant about what we were doing, was the one to get our corporate office approved. So then the rest I dummied down. So that way, in my opinion, the way Harrisburg works, well, we can throw this one away. We can throw that one away. Oh, this one here, this has got everything we want plus more. We'll approve this one, but we're throwing these other ones away. So we got denials on a lot of our satellite offices, but our corporate office got approved. So, it's a game in Harrisburg, and you got to play that game. And I don't think a lot of business owners in the real estate industry know that Harrisburg is really a game, and you've got to play the game from the start to the finish. And, you got to keep your cards close to your chest. Don't expose what you're doing, and, just run with it. But once you get it, then you got to blow it up all over the place. So everybody files. But in this case, the other brokerages a lot of them didn't file. A lot of them were sitting on the fence waiting for par, which I think led us astray on this thing. Led a lot of business owners down a slippery slope into a dark, dirty corner that there was no way to come back from, because till they finally said, go do it, they said, go do it to a handful of businesses at 2:00 in the afternoon, right before the waiver process was closing. So I think they did us all.
You're telling us how much time you spent on these things, coming up with a safety plan and that sort of stuff. And if people don't have that, it's going to take time to do it. So when you're under the gun, it's like trying to finish that college term paper with an hour left. It's never going to be as good and not have the same results. So what do you think about the state stance on this? So, I mean, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is you had to play politics here. I mean, they're very clearly playing the game. So was this the right thing to do for Pennsylvania?
The waiver process, the shutdown, there's a lot of questions there. Which one are you?
The real estate industry not having a blanket way to do business in a safe way, following CDC standards without having people congregate, because that's what the governor accused the real estate industry of just last week, that people congregate, which I don't see a lot of congregating and showings, but let's talk just about our industry here.
Yeah, I think that the governor or somebody in his staff had to have had a very bad experience with a realtor, because this is just not the way the norm is. But what they've proved, and what I'm going to go after, is, we pay a 2% property tax in most of Pennsylvania. I know the Philly market, you guys pay
4.1. There's some townships where it's like 2.5 or 3, but it's mostly 2%. I mean, we're mostly the same across the board.
So I'm already in the process of drafting legislation, which I did before, so I know how that whole thing goes. But I'm in the process of drafting legislation that, since real estate is not essential, we shouldn't be charging a 2% transfer tax on any transaction of real estate, because this is a housing thing that is non-essential, and is not looked at by our governor as essential. So since it is shelter and our legislation already says there is no tax on shelter, there should be no 2% transfer tax. So, and I've got about 7 House reps right now that are working with me on the legislation, along with a couple of senators that are working with me on on this legislation to draft. So we're not going to hit it while COVID's still in place, but we're going to hit it hard as soon as COVID leaves go, because you can't stand there as a governor and talk out of both sides of your face. You can't say that real estate and shelter is essential by shutting down evictions and shutting down foreclosures, yet not allowing people that are staying in a hotel because they got released from a women's shelter, a battered woman's shelter, that they got released from our state prison early, no home plan set up. They're kicked out onto the street.
Yeah.
They need shelter. They need something.
It's not even sales. Like, you can't go rent an apartment. We can't do that stuff in person at all. Like that, I think that's this isn't just a sales question here. This is real estate activities in general. So if you recall, Governor Wolf wanted to raise property taxes and raise transfer tax, and PAR lobbied against it. You're cued in. Do you think that has anything to do with this?
I think so. We didn't give him what he wanted, so he kind of backdoored us in this whole thing and shut us down. But what this is doing is actually hurting him more than anything, because you got to remember, in every county, they rely on a piece of that transfer tax to run their business. The state relies on a large chunk of that money to run their business. With all of the people that he furloughed and put out on unemployment in the real estate industry, the government's looking back at Pennsylvania and saying, why are you the 6th highest in fatalities, but you're the highest in unemployment? What's going on? What's happening? We're the only state at this point where real estate is shut down. So in 49 other states, there have been either a decision right from the get-go or hearings to show that shelter is a necessity and opened real estate back up. There's been multitude of the hearings on that subject in other states. And in Pennsylvania, our Supreme Court is refusing to hear those cases. So it's a tough one. I mean, it really comes back to, are they really playing politics with people's lives? And that's what it's coming back to.
That's how a lot of people feel right now. I mean, there's anger out on the streets about this particular issue. And I mean, housing makes up 15 to 18% of the state domestic product. It's more than energy. We put 23 to 34 people to work every time we sell or someone buys or sells a home. So that's why the unemployment's so high. It's because they're not looking at, it's not just the real estate transaction. It's the mortgage, it's the title, the property repairs, all those things that go into it. So I think you bring up some really great points here, Jesse.
And our safety plan stipulated that the only parties that could come into the house for a showing was those who were on the buyer agency agreement. So if you and your wife were buying a home, the two of you only, not your children, not grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, those two people who are identified as the decision makers, whose name is going to go on that deed, are the only two people allowed in the house per our safety plan. And the way PAR has rewritten these safety plans, so shoe coverings, really? Where nobody is using shoe coverings across the entire state for anything. Suddenly, realtors are supposed to use shoe coverings by PAR. Come on.
Well, I mean, looking back on, when you're the only state, and it's disappointing what PAR's done here, because we're sitting in this situation, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. I mean, we got this House bill in place. Even if it passes the Senate, which it looks like it might, you might know more than I do, but it looks like it's a bipartisan bill. It came out of committee today. And we're doing this on Monday, the 11th here. It's going to air the next day or two. The governor could sit on that bill for 10 days and not do anything. He could veto it, and it passed the House by 61% and change. So it's not enough to override the veto. So living in Philadelphia, I mean, you're a little more central than I am here. I'm looking at June 4th, and I'm thinking, man, I hope that's when we're able to open up here, at least the Philadelphia region, which is Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, counties as well as the city. So, I mean, do you think it goes that long, or will there be something that moves before then?
If you look closely at what Wolf has done, so every time he moved a line out is when something new happened. So he had extended the foreclosures and evictions up until the point that he released to 23 counties. So he's just extended the foreclosures and evictions till July 10th. So I personally believe he doesn't feel that Philadelphia and those surrounding counties will open up until July 10th.
It's an interesting observation. I hope you're wrong here. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying I hope. So.
I do too. But unfortunately, if you watch how his decision making has been, every time he moves a number out, a week later, then he comes out and releases something or does something. So if you're watching the evictions and the foreclosure system that he's been putting in place, every time he extends that date, when it gets to that date, he releases, it's a sudden release of something. So he released Northumberland County and the 23 counties with that. And then he postponed that to the following week for a decision on the stay for courts to open. The following week, he opened up 13 more counties, southern Pittsburgh. That extended the court system to be stayed and closed until July 10th. The evictions now have been extended out to July the 10th. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that he is thinking that the Philadelphia market is going to open until around July 10th. Although he's getting a lot of heat with counties like Lancaster County, York County, Dauphin County, Lebanon County, all saying, up yours, bub, we're opening back up.
There was a lot of that this weekend, yeah. Even Bucks County did the same thing. I mean, kind of those like tertiary counties all around, like if you were going to call it like the greater Philadelphia area. I mean, Lancaster's there, but it's kind of like on the edge. So I hear your point.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that the longer he does this shelter in place, the more harm that it does to our economy. The more that small businesses and real estate agents, because every realtor is a business, and that's what I was saying at the very beginning with waivers. You own your business.
100%.
Sally, who sits in the desk next to you at your office, she owns her business. So she should have filed for a waiver also for her business, setting up her own safety plan, along with the brokerage itself, because you were allowed to do individual safety plans. Mm-hmm. It was business and individual. So I think had, all 35,000 PAR members filed and then the brokerages filed on top of it, they would have been inundated with so many people that would more have been approved? Probably. So I think that PAR did us dirty there. Again, PAR, in my opinion, is not doing enough for the reactivation. PAR today came out and said, well, remember these counties that are moving from red to yellow because the county is saying so, you're licensed by the state. So even though your county is saying they're moving to yellow, you're not allowed to work because you're licensed by the state, and we're still going to come down on those issues.
Well, and that's the challenge for a lot of agents, because the ultimate recourse here isn't a fine. It's taking your license that's issued by the state, and then you're really in a lot of trouble. You're out of business. So, that's the unfortunate part, is that recourse is pretty extreme. And I mean, I hear your point very clearly here. I've had the same conversations internally with our team. I've had the same conversations with our broker. So you bring up a great point that PAR is saying, well, it's a statewide thing, even though these counties are yellow. And now with these kind of rogue counties coming into play here, right? And I mean, that's the way this is going right now. And I get it. Like, I understand everyone's, every situation is different. Even you look at Chester County. Chester County is very rural in some places. it's a little more, a little more built up in others. So it's, it's not a one size fits all sort of solution here.
It isn't, but if you look at what's going on in Pennsylvania, those rogue counties, they're Republican led. They're majority Republican led. I'm not up on Philadelphia, but I mean, maybe you could help with that one. The Philly market, are they Republican or Democrat?
I mean, they haven't had a Republican mayor since I've been alive, so we'll just leave it at that. And I'm not here to get political. I mean, it's just an observation, right? So,
yeah, I mean, these are observations that I have. I mean, again, I speak. I've got probably 35 House reps and 15 to 20 senators that I talk with almost on a weekly basis out of the Capitol. And a lot of them, and not all of them are Republican, not all of them are Democrat. And here, I'll throw the next big kicker. I'm neither. I'm a registered constitutionalist. I'm an independent. I don't side with one or the other. I vote for the best person, whether they're man, woman, whether they're Republican or Democrat. I vote for who I feel is the best person for the job, that has the best ideas to move us forwards. And again, just like when I said, at the very beginning, how I developed my real estate business and made some moves early on, I think the same way with our political leaders. Who's going to do the best job? But I think that there's a lot of politics in what's going on.
Agreed.
And the counties that are majority Democrat don't seem to be up in arms quite as much. I mean, Philly market has a lot of people that are up in arms, but they don't.
It's probably more than you think the longer this is gone. I mean, I think there's been a transition here, or a progression where for 2 weeks, okay, another 2 weeks, okay. Now we're into 2 months, and we got bumped out another 30 days when we've got adjacent states with more infections being able to at least do real estate activities. New Jersey to be one of them. I mean, I think I'm equidistant from Lancaster and New Jersey from where I live. So that's been the rub here. It's the overly restriction on real estate specifically, and it's hurting the economy, and it's hurting a lot of people individually. I mean, you're talking about these people that don't have homes to move to, or double mortgage payments, whatever you want to call it. There's financial harm being done here, and the answer is go collect unemployment or get some state benefits. That doesn't really solve a lot of problems for people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the public, including our governor, has a false sense of what really happens in real estate. So I think a lot of people believe that real estate has these big offices that have 150 agents in, and they're sitting by the water cooler, shooting the breeze every day. They're going out on the road and they're doing broker opens, and the agents are all driving 3 to 4 to a car, driving to the house and walking through and touring the house once a week with their company meetings. And I'll tell you, that's
doesn't happen.
That's old news. That's the way it used to happen. And I mean, even with the large offices in Lancaster that have 150 agents in them, you're lucky if you see 15 to 20 in the office on a busy day.
Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, I've got a team of 12 agents. I see them when we have our weekly meeting and we have our weekly training. And otherwise, everyone's kind of working on their own schedule. We have some things they got to do every day, but you don't need to be in person to do that anymore. We've got 70 some agents at our firm, same thing. I mean, you're at a bigger company than we are. It's no different. And there's a safe way to do this stuff. You have a plan that's documented. We've developed one, masks, booties, whatever. More importantly, what I love you said there is the decision makers are the ones coming in the home. I'm a big believer in that. You don't need to bring the parents and the best friend and all that stuff. That's where this can be done safely. And that's the unfortunate part about this, because there is a really safe way to do this. And obviously, Pennsylvania agreed with your plan. So, why not give everyone else a fair shake and say, hey, here's the restrictions. Follow the brokersrealty.com plan.
Well, here's the thing. And this has been a big conversation with House Rep senators and with Wolf's staff that I personally know and spoke with several times. Real estate brokers don't do what they used to do. So let's back up 30 years. 30 years ago, the broker was the procuring calls. The broker was and what was the final word on everything. Their thumb was always on the pulse of their company and their real estate and their real estate agents. Today, the brokers are just another adult human being sitting in a building writing a check. They're not what they used to be. They're not the procuring calls. The agents are the procuring calls. So in my opinion, legislation needs to be changed from that standpoint that, being a business owner in real estate, my agents procure more business than I do for them.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you look at the way the industry's changed. The rise of teams has proven that. I mean, the teams to me are the people that are the real players in the industry, where they're doing 2, 3, 4, 500 deals a year, some cases 1,000, versus the broker who maybe, they're there because of law. And Pennsylvania's pretty antiquated state with that, where you still got to make sure the broker's name's bigger than your name on your business card. And you go to California, you don't know who these people work for, because their cards just say, hi, I'm so-and-so with this XYZ Realty. So yeah, I do agree with you. Our laws are pretty antiquated. I think we had to have our fax number on our cards until a couple of years ago. I mean, who uses a fax? I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with here. So that's a really great point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot with real estate that the misconceptions of how real estate's conducted nowadays is just so antiquated from what really happens. Brokers are not generally holding an office meeting anymore. Back in the day, you held an office meeting. It was mandatory. All of your agents came. You went over the new things. You discussed things. You'd get on the chalkboard and you would write out, Mary Jane, she has 3 settlements this month. Her goal's 5. What are you doing that's going to get you to? You're having those that's now teams.
Totally agree.
Doing that now, not the broker. And then after your brokerage meeting for an hour, then everybody went out and crawled into a bunch of cars and you
take the broker tour.
Yeah, you went out, looked at the new listings that the company took on, then you would start calling your clients and say, hey, I just looked at 123 East Market Street in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, on our broker tour. It might not be the perfect home for you, but it's got some things in it that were on your wish list that, might really work. It's not done the same anymore. I mean,
not even close.
I own 6 Matterports.
Yep.
I want every agent to take the Matterport with them and scan the house on their first physical meeting once the house is ready for showing. Get it scanned. We can pull our photos out of that. We can do everything from that Matterport. We can do virtual walkthroughs, host virtual open houses. We can send that to everyone in our company. They can see the house without ever going. Gas ain't 79 cents a gallon anymore.
Well, and people value their time more too. They don't want to even go look at a house. If they think there's something wrong with it and it's going to be not right for them, they don't want to waste their time there. I mean, today's consumer wants it easy. They want to hit a button on their phone and buy the house. I mean, we're getting to that point, and I think there's a lot to learn from this sort of pandemic that we're going through, because if you can leverage technology appropriately, the showing could be like the last thing to happen, not the first, if you're doing it right. You're talking about technology, Matterports, Ricoh Theta cameras. That's the way the industry's going, and the people that don't do that are going to be the ones that are left behind. And I guarantee you, when we come out of this, we're going to see the number of agents drop by about 25 to 30%. No question about it.
Well, and just from 2010 to 2020, since I've had a real estate license. Now, again, I did a lot of real estate before that, but from the time that I had a real estate license, things have changed so drastically in the last 10 years that, when I first got into the business, I'd take a buyer out. And again, and that could be just who I was too, but I coach my agents and I coach other agents all the time. Back when I first started doing it, I'd fall for that. Well, here's a list of 40 homes that we'd like to see. Okay, let's go. Now it's
like a lot of people did that. So
Great.
drive by them all, come back to me and tell me which 5 you want to look at, and I got 2 hours for you. And that's how to help your clients too. And that's what a lot of people don't get. So that's a great observation. And the past 10 years have been pretty crazy, and it's only going to change even faster. I mean, we're just hitting this is like 2.0 coming out. You look at what companies like Zillow are doing, or Open Door. The tech innovation has been accelerated pretty dramatically over the past 18, 24 months. It's been a jam-packed episode here, man. This has been awesome, and you came on right away. So you broke down the waivers, you broke down what's going on in Harrisburg. You really said it all. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Call our brokerage office, 888-774-8488.
We'll make sure to put that up on the screen here. Jesse, thank you very much. You're like the most wanted person in real estate right now in Pennsylvania. Really appreciate you coming on. And more importantly, thanks for getting that story out there, because I think a lot of people need to hear what's happening. And this is a story that needs to be told. So appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Let's leave off with one note. What has NAR done?
They got 49 other states, not where we are.
They're all working.
I hear you.
If you are the National Association of Realtors, and there's only one state that's not practicing real estate, and NAR is sitting in D.C. doing nothing.
Yeah.
PAR is out in left field, in my opinion, but NAR hasn't done anything. With you're in Bright, MLS.
Yeah, Bright hasn't done much either. So
you don't have to spend money to be a realtor to have access.
Oh, yeah.
To it used to be a day where if you weren't a member of a local association, you didn't get access to the MLS. And if you want to be a member of a local association, you had to be a member of PAR, and then you had to be a member of NAR. You don't need any of that anymore. Times have changed so much with an independent MLS service like Bright. For $23 more, you don't have to be a realtor. What does that get for you? I think PAR and NAR, in my opinion, over this COVID, have destroyed the brand realtor. In my mind, they've destroyed it. They're not there. They're not fighting for us. There's just nothing going on.
And you're not the only person that feels that way. I mean, that sentiment's out there. If you check out like any Facebook group with realtors in there, I mean, this question has come up time and time again. And it's been 8 weeks. Everyone's working except Pennsylvania. So I think we can leave it right there.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Jesse. Really
Thanks,
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.